Yet another game review, yet another show about Nintendo 64, but we know what we like. Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly at KELLYTHUL on social media. And joining me, as always,
I am Dr. Mike at Official Pagan on everything. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, leave a couple of comments. What are your favorite Nintendo 64 games? Since that's one of our top topics now, along with Alice Cooper and Doom, of course. We've added Nintendo 64 to the mix. At some point, I'm sure we'll do Doom 64. And if we manage to work Alice Cooper into the episode, I think it's, just rolls everything into one. But you know what? The only way you can show your appreciation for us or for any of those things is by wearing our merchandise. So make sure you wear that merchandise. And the best way to keep up on whatever topics we're talking about is if you check in with us every day. And I know what you're thinking. There's no way we could post every day, but we do. We have a whole other show called Hard No. It's free just for you guys. When you like, subscribe, and leave a comment, a daily podcast that's a minute long and free to you, but just you guys. So be cool about it.
yep, we have every day we get up at 6 in the morning. We go over story drafts. We review the script. We rehearse the hard no. Um,
The
uh,
Podcasters Union fought us on this.
yep,
We were like, no, we have to do it.
you have to put in the time, and we put in the time on hard no. So every day you'll have a new hard no. Because
Giving it to
that's
you hard daily.
anyway. Another game review. We're sticking with the Nintendo 64, and we're going to talk about um Mario Kart. Uh the second largest selling Nintendo 64 cartridge. So it was around 9.9 million cartridges sold. Second only to, gotta guess what's ahead of Mario Kart?
I know what it is just because I had done the research in it. So I'm gonna go out on a wild limb here and say Mario 64.
Yep. Yep, that would be the one, Super Mario.
Yes. Super Mario 64.
The
And GoldenEye is 3, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I was actually surprised. I kind of figured Goldeneye might be actually first, but actually, the more I think about it, not so much because, and we'll talk about it. I think in this review a little bit. There are certain things that Mario brings, whether it's into Super Mario or into this, that's kind of cool. And Super Mario about 11.9 million cartridges sold. So there you go. But Mario Kart is the one for today. As we've established, we use the panda rating scale, 1 to 5 pandas for each of the categories. And the first category is basically fun factor. How fun, how enjoyable is this game? Um, I think I'll go ahead and start off on these for this show, Mike. And I'm going to put it at 4 pandas for multiple reasons. The biggest, and it's the biggest sale of this thing overall, it's the multiplayer option and what's going to be able to happen with that makes Mario Kart uh super fun to play, because you can, whether you're just trying to improve your own skills or go against one person or up to 4 people, lots of cool things can be going on with that. There's good variety in the number of courses you have. There's different things in terms of whether you want to do a head-to-head matchup, a battle, just doing kind of more of a time trial deal, or kind of compete in a league. So there's just tons of different variations on it. So lots of different ways you can play it. Lots of good multiplayer stuff. So that's where I end up with 4 pandas on the fun factor. How about you?
This game is going to be a really difficult one for me to rank because I do enjoy it. Let me just throw that out there right away. But there is big give and take in each of these categories for me. The fun factor of this is super high. The multiplayer is great. Super fun to play with multiple people. And a lot of my complaints here are going to be about the Mario Kart series as a whole. Because I did play the original on Super Nintendo, although Mario had a couple racing games before then on the NES or the Famicom, because I believe they were Japanese only, but you can play them with ROMs. And the Mario Kart series proper started on Super Nintendo. Not a fan of that one. This is in every way a huge improvement over the predecessor. But all of the games have certain mechanics that we'll get into as we progress through this review that essentially break the game if you're like a serious gamer and trying to play as a single player sort of campaign through this. There is full on game breaking mechanics to this whole series and the way that it works. So if you're playing as a serious gamer, the single player campaign just to play through all of the tracks, it's probably a 2, 2.5. But to play multiplayer, it's probably like a 10 on a scale of 1 to 5, because a lot of those game breaking mechanics that suck so bad when you're playing by yourself make it even more fun playing in multiplayer. Because not only are you playing with other people, and Nintendo 64, I already kind of knew and now get to see it firsthand. Its real strength is in its multiplayer abilities. That's where the real strength of the system lies, in all of its library for the most part. So not only is it multiplayer leaning to begin with, but a lot of those same things, which includes rubber banding AI characters who will immediately catch up with you and pass you no matter where you left them on the track, will just immediately catch up to you and pass you. And super overpowered weapons and things like that that can completely change the outcome of the race with no actual skill being required in it whatsoever. So if you're taking this game seriously as a single player campaign, you're not going to have a great time, especially for those two major reasons, because you will be way out in front and then dead last place. And there's nothing you can do about it because there's no skill involved. The AI riders are rubber banded to you, so they'll immediately shoot to your position and even pass you. They recover faster when the car spins out, in that they have no recovery time. They just immediately start again. You have a set recovery time for that. And all of the weapons are overpowered and they get an unlimited use of them, whereas you have to pick them up naturally as you go. So super unfair, but those things, when you're playing against other people, are super fun. So it's this weird off balance thing. And every category is like that a little bit for me. So that's why I wanted to get long winded on the first one and get it out of the way. So I'm going to say 4 as well, but it's entirely because of the multiplayer.
Gotcha. Cool. Controls are next. This was a tougher one for me on some fronts because it's not, to me, this is like a game tailor made for the Nintendo controller, because it's the trigger button on the controller serves as a trigger to kind of execute on certain things, and so that was good. The buttons for selection, it's precision steering with a Nintendo 64 controller. It's not going to happen entirely. You got to really work not to overcorrect. So I end up with 3 pandas for controllers for control.
Control's tough for me in a little bit of a different fashion. I think all of these games, and again, they're all, I mean, each one has things they've added or subtracted. And for the most part, the games have improved as the series has continued. The Nintendo 64 controller, though, especially for somebody like me who didn't have a Nintendo 64 initially, it's difficult to get used to that Trident 3-pronged controller for it. And I know there's aftermarket options and things like that, but just because that's not the type of controller that I'm used to, it's just a little difficult to get my bearings with it. The controls themselves are as responsive as any game in this series, though. So the actual control is fine. It's the Nintendo 64 controller that's the issue. To Kelly's point, though, taking turns, taking some of those hard turns is a little bit difficult. The game mechanics are designed, and this is, again, for all of them, it's the way the games work. It's designed so that if you drift into the turns without going off of the course, you get a speed boost coming out of it. Not fair, not skill based, because it just depends on how you hit that turn. there's really not a whole lot you can do to control that because different characters have different weights, move at different speeds. So a lighter character who's going to take those turns a lot easier, for example, or a lighter character when you're on a ledge who might go straight off of it is going to have different results on different tracks. So again, that's just going to the mechanics of this actual game, though, not the way the controller works. So again, I'm with Kelly. It's going to be a 3, but it's mostly because I'm not used to the Nintendo 64 controller. If you're a Nintendo 64 person, you're probably great at this game.
Yeah, it does. Once, and because that was, I didn't have NES experience with any Mario racing game, so my whole Mario Kart, I cut my teeth on Nintendo 64. So it became something that I was pretty comfortable with. And we, like I said, we had 64 for a while. So, okay. Okay. So now this next one is difficulty. And again, a reminder to the folks watching where we're going with difficulty. It's not, 1 is way too easy and 5 is way too hard. It is kind of appropriate level of difficulty for enjoyment. So it's like, did they kind of size it right to make it challenging? If you get something that's like challenging but not punishingly difficult, that's really the gold standard. That's that 5 panda right there, where you can kind of nail that. This one, for many of the reasons that Mike's already, the rubber banding in particular that Mike talked about, in terms of things going on, it's a little hard to peg it. So for me, I had to kind of go just down the middle again, go with a 3 for difficulty, because this one, you're not going to scratch your head and say, I don't know how to beat this game. It's like, well, you go faster than everyone else and you win. So that part's not too difficult. There's not a long strategy game in general. I mean, there's a little bit if there's a particular way you race well in terms of the character you pick and the size. Mike talked about the weights and how different things and the different characters interact. And depending on the course, a certain character might work out better for you. But not a huge strategy element to it. I mean, there's a little bit of it. So just kind of for all that, I kind of went down the middle of the road and went with a 3 for appropriate level of difficulty.
Yeah, we're very much on the same page with all this. I really enjoyed this game, and I need to keep saying that because I am mostly pointing out the stuff I didn't like about it, but I feel like it needs to be said for anybody who's not familiar with how specifically this series works. I'm gonna go with a 3 as well. And I love Nintendo and their consoles, but a Sega guy at heart because Sega was a lot more about, skill level and challenging games and more kind of adult games, more hardcore gamer related stuff. Whereas Nintendo's always been about casual gaming and casting the widest net possible. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's a different approach. So their approach for this game is more about making it fun for a group of people gathered around the TV playing together. And for that, you're not going to beat a game like Mario Kart. It's perfect. You can pick it up, get right into it. The difficulty level is exactly where it needs to be for a group of friends playing together. But again, if you're a serious gamer and want to play through this as a single player campaign, you're not going to have a good time. You are going to get destroyed by overpowered weapons. There's basically no skill involved in racing as a single player campaign because all of the characters are rubber banded to you. They will immediately catch up to you and pass you unless you're good enough at taking those drift turns where you're getting those speed boosts when you need them. And even then, you could be far out ahead. Somebody gets a lightning bolt. That's the end of it. You'll be in last place immediately because of the rubber banding. So it's got to be a 3 again. Super fun game, but not a game that you can take very seriously.
Yay, the 4th category is replayability. So that idea of can you come back to this game over and over again? And so for if I'm going to set aside the single player campaign and talk about basically experiencing this when racing against one or more foes. And to me, this, if you enjoy Mario Kart, you got tons of different courses you can go on to have some fun. I have replayability at a 5 because it's just, there's an opportunity every time for it to be different depending who you're racing, how things are going so it can be different. It does. It's not just the game that pulls that off. Part of it is you've got to, you've got to have players. You have to introduce somebody else because they become the factor that makes it different every time. And so that part's kind of fun. So I went with a 5 on replayability.
Yeah, I'm with Kelly once again. 5 on replayability. Again, solely for the multiplayer, but that's what this game is based around. It's meant to be a multiplayer game. It feels weird picking on the single player only because obviously that's not what they had in mind when they were designing this. This was made for the multiplayer campaign. So that's really where all of the attention to detail is, and that's where the game really shines the most. It's super fun. This is a game that the franchise is what 30 plus years old, and this game has got to be close to 30 years old. And people still talk about it, still make videos about it. We are right now, and you're watching it. So that says a lot about it.
Final category is visual appearance, an asterisk, kind of visual appearance given the limitations of the system. We don't want to kind of put it up against a 4K experience. Although, Mike, if you've maybe recently heard, or in the future here, depending on how we publish shows, Mike has begun to do some things to upscale HDMI. But go watch that show, or in the future, watch that show, and check that out. But so, given that within the range of what Nintendo 64 can do, I struggled on this one a lot because in a way, I'd almost say, boy, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to do Nintendo 64 review where I do higher than a 3, just because it's like, there's not a lot. But I actually did, or I would for something like a Mace the Dark Age, which is actually pretty kind of cool visually. And I'm going to go with a 4 here for appearance, and it basically comes from the diversity of tracks and experience, and they're kind of a cool environment. They're rendered in the world of Nintendo 64, so there's some limitations, but whether it's Bowser's Castle or Yoshi Valley, all that kind of stuff that's out there, there's tons of really cool, interesting track. Moo Moo Farm. So there's different kind of ones that are fun out there. Everything except Rainbow Road, which is just always the track I like the least on Mario Kart. I could just very happily avoid that one forever. I just think the diversity of the different landscapes they have for them and the nature of the tracks. I think most of them look really good. Wario Stadium looks pretty good. Very diverse. So I went back and forth, and I decided to go with a 4 for visual appearance.
Once again, we're on the exact same page there. I'm going to go with a 4 for visuals. And this isn't really a shot at Mario Kart. I don't like early 3D games, playing them now as retro games. I don't think early pixel games hold up really well. I didn't think they looked very good then, and they definitely don't hold up, especially, going back and playing a lot of the early PlayStation games. They look terrible. Even the ones that I can enjoy playing because I'm just into the games themselves. I will say that this, I think, holds up better than most of those games. Even though it does have the graphical drawbacks that Nintendo 64 games as a whole faced, they're kind of famous for their fog effect that they use on things because it didn't have the greatest draw distance, especially in comparison to its direct competitors, PlayStation and Saturn, which had a much further draw distance. Also, it gave very little memory to textures. So a lot of the textures they would use a blur filter on. They do that here a lot as well on the textures, but the bright and colorful graphics and its mix of 2D and 3D, I think it holds up a lot better than a lot of the early Polygon games do. So while the tracks are in 3D, which is what you need, the characters are still actually 2D.
Mm-hmm.
They're just pre-rendered the same way that Donkey Kong Country games are and things like that, and Killer Instinct. So the pre-rendered characters like that with the actual 3D backgrounds, it holds up a lot better than something that's fully polygon based. And so taking into consideration the limitations of the system, I think this holds up pretty good.
Okay, so wrapping it up, this is a 19 panda game, Mike, for both of us. That's where we kind of land down. So not too shabby. And it was fun to prep for this review and get back.
Yeah,
And
I played this a lot with my wife. There's a lot of screaming and yelling, and bad language involved. It was a lot of fun.
Quality family time. So let us know in the comments what you think here. If you agree with us, you want to push back on anything, like to do that. Also, if you are a big Mario Kart fan, uh, let us know your favorite or preferred racer. Who do you go to the most to go on? It was interesting that Donkey Kong itself was a late edition or a swap out. Kamek, I believe, who was
Yes. Yeah. I just found that out today.
it was a
That we're doing
villain.
this.
Was villain in Yoshi Island. That he was slated to be the last racer, and then DK had picked up some steam, and so they swapped him in. They were able to kind of leverage some existing assets to kind of bring DK in quickly. Um, I'm kind of glad they did. And obviously, DK is one of the bigger, heavier racers. I didn't, maybe my recollection is not as good as it used to be. I didn't have those two in the same weight class. But
No. Yeah, definitely not.
maybe they said, "Hey, we need a bigger guy," so they want Donkey Kong. But
I
I'm
mean, it
glad they
makes
did.
sense. Donkey Kong is, after Mario, probably one of their best known mascot characters. And Donkey Kong Jr. was in the original Mario Kart for Super Nintendo. Weird looking game. I never liked the look of the Super Nintendo one, but I'm sure we'll eventually get there.
So, did you have a preferred uh, driver character?
So going back and playing it now, I did play. This is one of the few Super Nintendo games that I did play at friends' houses, or I'm sorry, Nintendo 64 games that I did play at friends' houses. This and GoldenEye were, I think, the only games I had like real time on. I prefer the bigger characters. So Bowser and Donkey Kong, because even though they're a little bit slower, they take certain turns better. They're way better on like bridges and things you can fall off of. Because Toad is always my temptation to go with because he moves so fast. But you hit one of those bridges, he just goes flying off of it.
Yep, it's fair. Yeah, Bowser's always just it's a good personality match for me, and then the weight's nice on the bridges, like you say. So cool. Let us know in the comments if you have a preferred character that you race with, and what you thought of the review. So thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bog Panda.